China so interested in Africa when her children are not interested in their home. Chocolates, I always tell this story. Switzerland does not make chocolates. Chocolates are made by Africa because 75, if not 80% of the cocoa is coming out of Africa. Yes. Ghana, we are blessed that we've got the Consul General from Ghana. When I used to work for Barclays, Ghana was one of the countries that I covered. When it comes to cocoa harvesting, it's not us who are around Ghana. It's the global corporates who are not us, who are all hovering over Ghana. Why? For the cocoa. And then they take the cocoa, go and produce the cocoa somewhere else, and then we buy the processed cocoa, not processed by us, but by someone else. So I'm just raising these issues to challenge ourselves. We have to stand up, which is what we have done, and let's just clap hands to ourselves. And we are saying we are going to organize ourselves.
Senator Sanders and I, we were in Africa to Sierra Leone, the Ivory Coast. We went together several years ago. Quickly, this is so important. New York City alone has a $92 billion budget, $19 billion procurement budget. And we're not building institutional wealth. 2050 is predicted that African Americans will have a zero net worth. Zero. We have incomes of middle class Americans, but wealth of white high school dropouts. These are real numbers. A lot of our young boys are coming home from incarceration. A lot of our young men are graduating from college. Here's an opportunity to connect with our continent and rebuild the infrastructure of our continent. Things are going on the continent that we should be a part of. And no one understands the historical analysis of building an infrastructure more than our faith-based institutions. It is within our faith-based institutions that is the foundation of black wealth. We are losing our wealth. This is such a pivotal moment for people of color globally. And it's ironic that we was ripped from the bosom of the continent, and the continent is now calling us back. And there are those who are going to heed the call, and there are those who are not going to understand how important it is to come home. Let's use our knowledge not only to build corporate America, but to build our homeland. The resources are there. And when we were in the Ivory Coast, how they embraced us was unbelievable. How they stated, this is your land. Pick out a plot and see where you want to build your home. That is the opportunity that's being afforded to us. The door of return. All over the globe. I've been back and forth to China 6 or 7 times, and I cannot tell you how many people from China are in Africa right now. If it's so bad, why are you there? Think about it. This is an important initiative, and I cannot thank all of the organizers who are moving over the country to put together this initiative, the Door of Return. We're going to have sister city agreements with some of our cities in Africa. This is an opportunity for our young professionals who are contractors, construction engineers, educators, healthcare professionals, those who have ideas. This is an opportunity to return to the continent and see the unbelievable aspects of how do we build the continent in the manner in which we see fit. When you go to places like Dubai, where they have built out the city from scratch. They've learned from the mistakes of other cities, and they're starting to build out new cities. We have an opportunity to build smart cities in Africa. Artificial intelligence, smart cities, using the technology, growing those partnerships. Just think about it. This is an empty landscape that we can paint. Taking the knowledge we've learned from America and do what Jewish people did in Israel, we can do it here in the continent of Africa, demanding Washington have a legislative agenda that fits the African initiative, make sure they get the resources they need, demanding our pension funds are being invested in Africa. We have the power now to think not outside the box, but let's destroy the box and have a new relationship and a new conversation. And so let me community, the immigrant community, and people who made this city who it is. I should win because of only one reason only. I'm so darn better than everybody that's running. And it's clear, this is our time. If I'm not there, trust me when I tell you, this is a Matthew 21:12 moment. I'm not going there to sit down at the table. I'm going there to turn the table over. Anyone else is going to sit at the table, and they're going to give you the crumbs from that table. No, this is our time.
Yes.
You know who I am.
Yes.
You know what I did in the police department with 100 blacks in law enforcement. You know what I did in the state senate. You know what I'm doing in the borough of Brooklyn and how we're making sure our people have an opportunity. Look where my capital dollars have gone. People are going to come here and have a conversation. I'm going to come here with a determination.
Right.
This is our moment.
Yes.
And if we lose it,
Yes.
shame on us. Thank you.
Good job. Good job, Eric Adams.
Inspiring and powerful speeches. So I was actually thinking, what else can I add? But I think what I would like to add is that the case for investing in Africa has never been stronger than it is today.
Yes.
Africa has got some of the fastest growing economies in the world. And why is it like this? It is because if you compare Africa of 20 years ago to the Africa of today, it is a complete sea change. 20 years ago, the continent was ravaged by wars. There were wars, there were conflicts, there were no democratic elections. Today in Africa, we are at a stage of peace building. We are past the stage of conflict. We are at a stage where we are building peace, where we are strengthening institutions and the rule of law. So the ease of business, because of the fact that we are now at a stage of peacemaking, post-conflict, the ease of doing business in Africa has improved so much. The population of Africa is estimated to be 1.7 billion by 2030. This is an amazing opportunity, and I think the previous speakers spoke to this. This alone presents enormous opportunities. Africa has got a youth bulge. A large portion of the population of Africa is youth. This presents another opportunity for growth, for more development. People spoke about smart cities. Urbanization, Africa is the fastest urbanizing region in the world. So the new cities are going to be built in Africa, and this presents opportunities for investors. Existing cities are already growing and developing, but this development needs to be managed and controlled. And this is where smart technology, this is where the fourth industrial revolution comes in. And I think America has advanced in these areas. And I think many of you, some of you who are in this room, are in some of these sectors. Therefore, that is why we're inviting you to come and invest in Africa. Africa requires industrialization. We're coming from a low base, but we require industrialization. We require manufacturing in so many sectors. And I think for American business, this is another opportunity because you can actually come and build your own industries in Africa. The incentives that are being offered by our governments are rising. They are lucrative. And this is an opportunity for you to come and invest and use these incentives to build new industries. There are so many ideas for industries that can still be built in Africa. For example, agriculture, agro-industries, using again the fourth industrial revolution, creative industries to tap into the enthusiasm of young.
But as we say in Ghana, all protocols observed. I'm very excited and honored to be here because I realize that for this movement to go on, we have to depend on our churches. About 25 years ago, when I was in New York as a professor in the City University of New York, I was also a leader of Ghanaian associations. And then I went to Ghana to do some politics, and I've been brought back as the Consul General. One big change that I've observed was that all the ethnic-based Ghanaian associations have now joined the churches. The churches are expanding, but the ethnic-based associations are shrinking. And that is why I'm saying that for us to mobilize and organize people, we will have to depend on the churches. So I want to thank Dr. Dylan for this initiative.
The owner of Thomasina's Restaurant. Thank you, Frank, and thank you, Thomasina's, for hosting us and for just being such a great host. And I particularly and specifically wanted us to be here because as we talk about Black empowerment, economic empowerment, it is important that we begin to do so on our own turf. And it is also important that we support our own businesses. So I want to encourage, you should all have one of these at your table. If you don't, I want everybody to get one. Thomasina's Catering Hall, and pastors, business leaders, clergy, and wherever you are, if you are in government, please let us support Thomasina's and let us certainly support our own. I want to again, acknowledge all the business leaders, the business owners that are here. Another good friend for many years. Michael Duncan, let's put our hands together for him, the owner of Caribbean Breeze and many other businesses in the community. We appreciate you, sir, and your partnership and your involvement. I want to just also salute the staff and the team at the Door of Our Return Foundation for the great work. My wife and I, we can't do this alone. And let's put our hands together for her again. Isn't she amazing? Thank you, Dr. Zinzali, Dylan, for your partnership and for all that you do and the passion that you share for Africa. But I want to salute our Executive Director for the Door Foundation, Reverend Evelyn Mans. Let's put our hands together for her. Stand up, Reverend Mans, so that those who don't know you can see you. Reverend Mans look young, and she is young and cute. But if you saw the movie the other day and you know anything about the marches in the 60s, and you remember the march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Alabama, and that the two little children, young people, girls, that were marching right behind Dr. Martin Luther King, Reverend Evelyn Mans was one of them. So she's been in the fight for a lot of years. But all the sponsors, Artstone Holding Company, let's put our hands together for them. The president, Randy Braz, is also in the house. Stand up, Randy, so they can see you, sir. President for Artstone, and all the others. But thanks again, Tony, thanks. We will hear from her a little bit later. Stacy N.C. Grant, let's put our hands together for Dr. Stacy N.C. Grant, getting ready for the Faithpreneurship Conference that will be at the
new TW.
With all due respect to Zimbabwe and South Africa, you know that as far back as 1963 in Addis Ababa, the first president of Ghana, Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, declared that Africa must unite.
Yes, sir.
Africa must unite. But I can shamefully say that until now, we have not been able to unite. But now, this is the time. This is the time that Africa has to unite. And there's also a new leadership in Ghana. The current president of the Republic of Ghana, Nana Addo Akufo-Addo, is now in the leadership role to bring Africa together. In September of last year, in Washington, D.C., at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., and I was privileged to be there, he declared the year of return. The year of return. And that is the movement to motivate and encourage our African brothers and sisters in the diaspora to visit Ghana. And when he says visit Ghana, by implication, he's saying visit Africa. It's not only Ghana, but he's inviting everybody to visit Ghana and Africa. We are always saying Ghana because Ghana is the eye of Africa. Why do I say that? When we look at those imaginary lines that divide the world into north and south, the middle is the equator. And also, if we look at the imaginary lines that divide the world into east and west, the zero longitude, which is called the Greenwich Meridian, these two converge in Ghana. And that is why Ghana is the eye not only of Africa, but of the world. So most initiatives, I'm not surprised, will start from Ghana, but it will spread to other parts of Africa. There are two things going on, two policy implementation that we are trying to push forward that have come from our president. And many people have addressed this issue. One, value addition.
For doing these things, he's been doing this all his life. I do not remember a moment when he has not been doing these things. So I applaud that, and I would suggest to you that this is accumulation of just about everything, all of that wisdom and knowledge that you have brought together is coming out here. Now we need to take that door of no return and make it a return door. We need to go there in strength and in numbers, but we need to do better than that. We need to go with skills, technology, and business. As the chair of banking for New York State, I look forward to working with businesses here so that we can ensure that they are capitalized when they go back to Africa. It is good to visit Africa. I'm blessed. I have visited Nigeria twice and the Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast once. And I'm actually doing some business with some areas in Nigeria. It is good to go there. You'll never be whole until you go home. You'll never feel whole until you go home. But it is also good to go and see what trade they have and what trade we have, so that we can go from welfare to our share. We need to go from aid to trade. We really need to go and at a higher level. So I am, of course, the servant of everyone in here. I'm struggling every day, pastors, to be the least among you. And for me, it's easy being the least among you. Having said that, I also am looking forward to sitting down with you and speaking about what trade projects do you have. Let me throw one out. Did you know that $13 billion in JFK? Did you know that there are some African banks chartered in the U.S.? Meaning that we got a borough president up here. Oh Lord, I'm in trouble. Now you know I'm gonna sit down quick because they don't allow me to stay in the same place with him. He overshadows me so much that I'm scared I'm gonna move over here. Good to see my friend. So under those conditions, we who are having trouble getting loans from banks here may be able to get loans from banks that are chartered in New York State, but African banks. We need to think outside the box. We need to think in a whole new way. Who says that partnerships between African countries or continental Africans, which is the way that you should describe them, since you're all African, continental Africans can start working with our businesses here. We should not be foolish in this day and age. So having said that, there's so much more to say, but there are better people who will say it. And under those conditions, I will turn it back. I look forward to working with anyone. My name is State Senator James Sanders Jr., and I am the state senator for thinking people. If you are a free person, I am your senator. If you are a slave, I am not your senator. There are no slaves in here. Tony, save me from myself.
Thank you. And the senator didn't even talk about the critically important piece of legislation that he moved.
A place. Balak, in chapter 22 of the book of Numbers, called for a prophet, Balaam. Not a prophet of God, but he was a prophet, to tell and put a curse upon them. And I was thinking, we have a prophet in the White House.
Yes.
He's telling us to go back.
Well, you're right.
Every time Balak tried to curse them, what came out of his mouth was not really what he wanted to come out of his mouth. But it was the truth. And so I think that we have someone sitting in the White House now who is opening his mouth. And what he's saying is a truth from God that we need to hear. He's telling folk to go back. Maybe God is telling us not to physically go back, but we need to go back with our money, with our gifts, with our talents, with our resources, and we need to join back together with our brothers and sisters in the motherland. Now, I was listening to CNN a few days ago, Dr. Dillon, and they said that there was 350 million guns in America. That's more than there are people. Now, the media and everybody else will have you think that the young brothers, black men, and
even if they don't go to Africa with us on the trip, they can certainly support it financially. You should ask them to also have a committee on Africa and with a focus on international trade. Now this opens up, so some of us represent not only our neighborhoods, but we represent an entire city or county or even the state. Opens up the opportunity to engage business people about trade in Africa. If there are raw materials that they're buying or need to buy, this is a golden opportunity to be coached on how to get engaged in that process. There are a lot of small businesses in our neighborhoods, and even some small industrial and manufacturing firms that are buying goods and services that they could buy abroad cheaper, but most of the time they don't have the expertise and need to be coached. The door of our return could be a clarion call to look at economic opportunities on the continent. Now, let's also shatter some myths. Not everybody in Africa is poor. There are some very wealthy investors in Africa who could buy our neighborhoods. And we also need to talk about cross-investment, where we can invest in Africa, but they're right here in America. There are communities that are in dire need of investments, and that's how you sell your elected officials about this idea of engagement with Africa in our neighborhood. There, Africans can buy up all of Linden Boulevard and bring in all kinds of businesses and joint venture with us who live here. So that's the kind of vision that we have to push our elected officials to have. The last thing I'll mention, I'm still under my 2 minutes, I think. Okay, I'm done.